Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the Lord Ninja Joke MMA Picks podcast. As always, I'm joined by Will in the UK and Josh in Australia. I'm Dom, I'm based in the US. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to be breaking down Max Holloway versus Conor McGregor 2, taking place this weekend, UFC 329. This is the card. Guys, it's a great card, stacked top to bottom. We're going to focus on breaking down the fights outlined in red, but outside of those fights, is there anything you wanted to flag? We've got some exclamation marks here. Maybe Josh, you want to take us through those?
Yeah, look, first of all, I love this card from top to bottom. It's pretty stacked full of maybe not talent, but bangers pretty much. I mean, if I was to say talent, then I wouldn't really include Zach Reese in that, word usage or Almeida for that matter. But let's go over the exclamation points here. So from bottom to the top, I am concerned about Costa here simply because he's taking this fight on short notice, as is Durden, but there is a bit of a caveat there given that Costa fought much sooner than Durden did. So there's like a month difference in scheduling there. And the primary concern about that really is that Costa is a big flyweight. He's bulky, he's heavy, he's dense maybe. And I feel like if he has a rough cut, then maybe Durden can wrestle him for 3 rounds. Ryan Gandra versus Zach Reese. Gandra is a favorite for, excuse the French, but for fuck knows what reason. I feel like Reese is pretty much live for the upset here because Gandra, his only win was against Jose Medina, and Jose Medina is like a entry-level exam to the UFC. Everyone defeats him. He gets passed around like a nutmeg blunt rotation. He is just outright terrible, and for Gandra to win against Medina means bupkis. And then Krylov Whitaker. My heart's going to be broken during this one because as you guys know, I am a big Whitaker fan. I had him winning against Yoel Romero those 2 times, and I was like, holy fucking good at this. So like my main concern for Whitaker here is that he is moving up to 205. I mean, he is not a very big 185 fighter, and now he's moving up to 205. He's only 6 foot. He's gonna be out physiqued by Krylov, and we can go on all day about Whitaker's technique and all that stuff, but frankly, it comes down to Whitaker moving up in weight against a bigger fighter, against someone who is fairly volatile in the cage, and Whitaker's pretty much kind of at the end of his career almost, and that sucks to say, but he is getting there. You know what I mean? Like, he is reaching the end of his career. His chin's gone, and Krylov, whilst rough as a fighter, has that 205 power, whereas Whitaker doesn't. So that's why that exclamation mark is there. Krylov's like a 2.20 dog at the moment, or something like that. And I feel like an upset is pretty much gonna happen, in my opinion. I don't know, but we'll see. Will, what about you?
Yeah, it's a good card. It's a very good card, and we're going to go into detail all the main ones. So, I mean, I feel like we've chosen the best. Yeah, Krylov Whitaker is intriguing, but it's one of those, like, first time in a new weight class kind of fights where breaking down the fight and analyzing the betting line, it doesn't necessarily really come down to like fighting styles or what you can expect from either guy, because you just don't know what you're going to expect from Whitaker. That's kind of tricky. And then yeah, it does take a little bit of a dip. It's interesting. It's kind of like the fighters that we've got on the prelims are, all kind of like relatively well known by prelim standards. So that's good. But it's just, I don't know, like there's something noteworthy in every fight by name value, but then the fights themselves don't necessarily intrigue me a whole lot. Like, I'm not that excited for anything on the prelims, but I'm like, oh, I'll tune in for that guy. you know, so it's okay. But obviously the main card's very interesting. So yeah, I'm happy to just crack on and just get into it.
Yeah, without any further ado, let's take a look at the main event. Two fighters that really need no introduction. We've got the return of the Mac, Conor McGregor against Max Blessed Holloway in a 5-round fight. And I think the interesting thing for me was that I was doing some research on this one, and Conor McGregor, of course, he's been in negotiation with the UFC since God knows when. He hasn't fought for 5 years, so constantly negotiating with the UFC. He wanted a 3-round fight, but I think the UFC didn't want to set an unusual precedent. I don't think they've ever had a 3-round main event, except for maybe a last-minute cancellation. So, you know, they obviously said, no, Conor, you're going to do 5 rounds. So I thought that was pretty interesting because it obviously indicates he knows that he's going to be rusty. I think ring rust is a thing. To say it doesn't exist would be a bit crazy. Anyone who's done any sport or any activity and not done it for 5 years and then picks it up again knows there's going to be a little bit of time taken to get used to the environment again. So certainly super interested to see how Conor McGregor reacts to being back in the octagon, what he looks like. What I've seen on his Instagram, on his socials, is that he does look in really good shape. Obviously, he's fought at welterweight 3 times before. I think that's quite interesting. He's got a 2-1 record at welterweight, but he's got a losing record at lightweight. So I don't know really what to make of the weight class. I think the weight class for me, the way I look at it is it's just because Conor doesn't want to cut weight. He's been talking about, you know, basically being unable to cut weight for a while. You know, he was on the Ultimate Fighter series and he had that interaction with that funny interaction with Michael Chandler where he says, I'll fight you at middleweight. Basically, you know, he knows that he can command the terms of his fights, and 170 just means he doesn't have to cut weight. But I don't think Conor McGregor is a real welterweight, and those 3 welterweight fights that I mentioned were against lightweights. They were against Nate Diaz both times and Donald Cerrone. So he's not fought an actual welterweight. He isn't a welterweight. So I've seen a lot of people online going, oh, he's going to be massive, he's a welterweight. He's massive because he's gained a lot of bulk. But I think in terms of like height, in terms of like performance at welterweight, I don't think we truly know that he can beat a welterweight. But that doesn't matter because he's fighting Max, who obviously campaigned mostly at featherweight. So guys, where do you start with this one? What do you find interesting about the fight? And are you happy that Conor McGregor's back?
You want to go first, Will, or me?
I'll keep it short and sweet. No, not happy that he's back. Couldn't give a shit. I'm completely honest. Never been a fan of the guy. Been a hater long before he touched the belt. And just bad for business, bad for the sport. Don't like it. But, you know, the fight is in front of me. I will break it down. I mean, I say I will. I think it's just... yeah, the weight class thing is kind of interesting, but like I just think that he's got far bigger like physical problems than what weight class he should be fighting at. And I think that even if he does have a size advantage over Holloway due to the fact that he's a more natural welterweight, I agree with you. I don't think either of them are natural welterweights at all, obviously. I just think that the other physical issues, such as, you know, years of cocaine abuse, are probably going to be far more of a physical detriment to the man than Max Holloway's possibly being slightly undersized. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really weird one. It's like obviously there's a huge fight, huge names, but like I said about the Robert Whittaker fight earlier on, like the main like learning block is just the fact that we just haven't seen him for 5 years, and we know that he's been off doing suboptimal things for a professional fighter for the last 5 years. You know, and you talk about him wanting to do 3 rounds instead of 5. I think that's really interesting and really telling. I think also all of the stuff with Michael Chandler and the fight that just never happened, incredibly telling as well, because if he was dedicated to really wanting to get a win and like breathe any form of life into his MMA career, Michael Chandler was right there to be the best and most credible open goal you could get. Like, I think he probably could have been the favorite over Chandler. I don't remember what the betting line was, but it would have been close. Whereas And just the fact that that fight never got over the line, I think, is kind of weird, because if we're being honest, Michael Chandler would have probably sacrificed somebody's life to get that fight. He was calling for it. He was doing everything he could. So I imagine it was just some sort of negotiation thing for Conor. And I don't know. You got something like I'm not a fighter. I don't have like a fighting career to worry about. But like, there must come a time where you have to make some sort of financial sacrifices to get the thing that you really want, if you really want it. And at no point did he do that. So I just don't believe he gives a fuck about his career. In the same way that I didn't really think Mike Tyson gave a shit about his career when he fought Jake Paul. Like, I don't think the result matters to McGregor at all. I just think he's here for a little bit of money and the chance to just sort of put himself back into the headlines for reasons other than what he's been in the headlines for across the last 5 years. So it feels like sports washing in a way, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I go off on a tangent there. I just think Holloway deserves the credit and should be more than good enough at this stage in his career, simply because he's been active. He's been at the top. Like, what's the worst fighter Max Holloway has fought in the last 5 years? Like, it's still a probably very impressive name. But like Korean Zombie, probably. Like, he's been doing very well, and he probably does well here. Like, there's not much more you can say, really. I think, yeah, I just think Holloway's the side for me personally. Josh, any sort of key points you want to raise here? It is a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, no. I mean, you've pretty much covered the weight thing here, but I always get a bit weird whenever a fighter who fought at 145 moves up to 155, looks maybe not different, but doesn't look like his 145 champion self, and then he moves up again to 170, and I don't think Holloway's gonna look too big at 170. He just has to make 170. That's all. Like, he doesn't have to cut down to 170. He just has to, you know, eat pizza and shit for a week, and then bam, 170. That kind of stuff, right? But let's get into the technicalities here, the striking and whatever the shit. Conor is likely to have the power side here. I think, like, he is still a very heavy hitting fighter. We saw him do kind of well against Poirier those 2 times before his leg snapped, and I think that we are going to see McGregor have moments in which Holloway gets maybe rocked a little bit early on. But then again, that's Holloway for you. He likes to get punched in the face. It gets him hard, maybe. I don't know. But I think on the flip side, Holloway has one key strike here that's going to make all the difference, and that's going to be the leg kicks. Now, we all think of Holloway as just a boxer. You know, he notoriously claimed he's the best boxer in the UFC, baby, and all that stuff. You know, when he fought Calvin Kattar in 2021. And so that's pretty much stuck in a lot of people's minds that he is a boxer. But when you look at how he fights, he leg kicked the crap out of Gaethje, you know, one of the best leg kickers at 155. He leg kicked Poirier during their last fight mid last year. And because of Conor's injury, I feel like leg kicks are going to be a key proponent both psychologically and physically for Holloway to win, because if McGregor doesn't want his legs to be broken again, you know, he's going to be very cautious about eating those leg kicks. And whilst we can talk all day about Conor having the counter punch to those leg kicks, I'd still think that if Holloway employs those leg kicks early on, it's just going to be a smart thing for him to do, really. But yeah, it's a Conor fight. It's a UFC event. Conor and the UFC are buddy. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Maybe there's going to be some conspiratorial Holloway takes the fall or makes a fall or whatever they call it. You know, it's maybe some weird shit's going to happen. Maybe Conor isn't even going to make weight. I feel like he is going to miss weight by maybe a pound. And they're going to do one of those scale things where they look at the scale for like 1 second and be like, "Yep, he made weight." You know, we've seen that before. We've seen fighters of a high prominence or a high status in the UFC quote unquote make weight. You know what I mean? Like maybe we're going to see some wild stuff in that regard. But still, if it's a clean fight, leg kicks and all that stuff is going to be on the side of Holloway here. But then again, it's Conor. He's got the power. He's probably cutting weight from 190 because the dude's big. He's had 4 years to do steroids and coke. So who knows what it's going to look like on the scales. But either way, volatility in this fight is high. It's hard to predict, but I still think Holloway is likely to win here. But I'm still going to dabble on a McGregor upset. Maybe an old bet here. I don't know yet. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the betting angles for a moment, because I think that's a pretty good encapsulation of the fight. Got max money line, myself and Will on that, and inside the distance on 3.5 rounds. Just to pick up on a few things here. So the current money line is around 1.5 minus 200. It's been hovering around that area for a while, where initially it got blown out, I think, to like minus 400 when it first opened. Max was a massive favourite, and there's been slow, steady buyback on Conor. Feels like we've equilibrated around the minus 200, 1.5. I can't see it changing much. I've seen some, comments out there that maybe Conor will get more love on the betting lines, but I just think it's hard for me to believe that, because I think for all the people that want to bet on Conor, there's a lot of pragmatists, a lot of realists out there who are going to bet on Max. And it really comes down to the thing that Will said at the top of breaking this down, which is he's been through so much in 5 years. It's not just the coke abuse, is it? He's had the lawsuits, these incidents with I'm trying to find the right verbiage here, with young ladies in clubs, and accusations, and we don't need to get into that. That's nothing to do with, but that kind of stuff takes its toll on you. I think. I think I did mention it on the podcast with Tapura. I said, he's been out for a year, and there have been personal things happening in his life. And anyone who's had a lot of personal challenges in their life knows that does take something out of you mentally, and it can defocus you, right? So I think Conor McGregor is an extreme example of someone who's been defocused by extracurricular activities. Also, he's got his businesses, his many businesses. Like he's always starting new businesses, and he's also. I think he's in politics now as well. He's kind of like wanting to be the president of Ireland, the prime minister of Ireland. So yeah, he's always putting up these strange videos on his Instagram to do with nationalism. But yeah, the way I see the fight going is very in line with what you said, Josh. I think Conor McGregor is at this point in his career, if he has any semblance of his old self, he'll be, I guess, the more powerful fighter, maybe live for 1 or 2 rounds. But I think after that, he's going to experience a severe drop off. Just due to the fact that he hasn't fought for so long, that he never had good cardio at lightweight. So at welterweight, I mean, his bone structure is the same, but he's going to be a lot more dense, carrying a lot more weight. I think he's relatively smart in the sense that I think he will know, if I don't finish Max inside of 2 rounds, I'm pretty much, my chances drop off massively. So I need to really, I think he's going to go for Max early, try and hurt Max early, and he may connect with Max. So. Later on when we talk about our bets, I'll go into the way I've positioned myself for that, potential contingency. But I think Max is the side at this price. I think it's a little bit crazy for him to be minus 200. I understand why people like Conor. I know he's got the aura, but I think people are maybe underestimating what it's like to be out of competition for 5 years, and with all the antics. I think that. I personally don't understand betting on Conor at this current line of he's less. Well, I think he's like 3 or plus 200 or less. I just feel like that's not enough value for the percentage chance that he has of winning. I think his chances of winning are a knockout in rounds 1 or 2. I've seen some stuff about him grappling the first fight. I think the first fight's totally irrelevant. I think it was like 13 years ago. Max was a child. Conor was a child. Like, I just think they're 2 different fighters. I don't think Conor's going to grapple here. I just saw some people saying, "Oh, Conor's going to grapple." I was like, "Are you out of your mind? If he grapples, he's going to gas so much quicker. He's a striker. He wants to keep this on the feet. He wants to knock Max out. That's Conor's plan." I think Max has many more ways and tools to win this. Like you already mentioned, the leg kicks, which is a great shout, Josh. I think he's going to be employing leg kicks. I think if anyone was going to shoot a takedown or feign a takedown, it will be Max, just to keep Conor guessing, keep him off him for the first 2 rounds. I mean, I think if Max was to take Conor down, I think Conor would be gassed instantly. Like, I just think he's not here to grapple. Conor wants a stand-up fight, and if Max really wants to spoil the party, if he's shot within 30 seconds, you know it'd be in the bag. So I do see it as a complete stand-up fight. I don't think there's going to be much grappling here. And yeah, we can talk about betting strategy later on. Let's move on to the co-main event.
All right. Well, look, I am a huge fan of BSD. You know, Benoit Denis. I have been on his side for pretty much all of his career, even though he has looked like other garbage here and there. But this is where I take my leave from the hype train and I leave the station saddened, because I feel like he is going to be outmatched in a lot of places against Pimblett. Now, I don't like Pimblett. I have never been someone who has picked Pimblett. Like, I've always thought that he was a bit of a unnecessary hype train, because each fight there's been an asterisk there, and now we see that he isn't quite a high level fighter, but he is durable, and that's where I think BSD is not, and that's pretty much why I'm no longer taking BSD in this fight. I did think about it. I did think about taking BSD earlier, but like the more that I remembered Paddy and his fight against Gaethje, the more that I think that it's going to be a battle of whose chin is going to get walloped harder, or who tested harder or whatever. And in that case, BSD, his chin is notorious for being tested each time he fights. I mean, I'm a bit conflicted here, really. Like, I don't like Pimblett, but I know that BSD is going to lose. It's one of those bad matchups for him, really. When it comes to striking, Pimblett can throw down, and so can BSD, but again, it comes back down to BSD's chin. And there's been some speculation about him having staff from people who aren't doctors, so that's a whole different fucking topic. But frankly, I just think that in terms of who can outstrike the other person the best, it's got to be Pimblett. He thrives on chaos. Like, we saw him do well against Gaethje. Who the hell can do well against Gaethje? Not many people can. And even though he lost that fight, it's still 5 rounds of experience against someone like Gaethje, and that's going to pay off huge. In terms of grappling, though, we all know BSD is a fantastic grappler. He can do really well on the ground, but again, that's Paddy's background, and I think that Paddy is going to beat him to the positions, really. I can't pick BSD here. No matter how much I want to look at that squinty ass face of his right there, I can't. I gotta go with whatever Pimblett looks like right there. That kind of look, I gotta go with him. I'm picking Paddy Pimblett to win this one. I reckon there's potential for a KO here, and that's why that's what I was talking about earlier, about the chin durability and all that stuff. And yeah, Dom, you got a bet there for Paddy, so I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I don't know if Will has counterpoints, because I don't really have many. I guess if I was going to say some nice things about BSD, he's on a good run at the moment. I think he's had favourable matchmaking personally. I guess I'll keep it short and sweet. I think there are actually levels here. I think Paddy is better than BSD in 2 key areas. I think he's better at jiu-jitsu. I know he's better at jiu-jitsu. I really do know this, because Benoit Denis, I researched him extensively for many fights, and he started jiu-jitsu. He hadn't done any jiu-jitsu until he was 22. That's when he started. That's not like he wasn't an expert at 22. He had to work on it, right? Paddy Pimblett has been fighting for longer than that, let alone grappling. So I think there will be levels to the grappling. I think Paddy Pimblett will be quite happy if BSD takes him down. I think BSD will take him down. I don't hate commenting what other people say, but people have said, I think Benoit Denis is going to keep this standing, and that's his best chance to win. Absolutely not. Like, Benoit Denis can't strike with anyone. I mean, just watch the Hooker fight. His very last fight, he's getting tuned up by Hooker on the feet. he does. I don't think he's going to stand here. I think we know what he's going to do. He's going to throw heavy to try and get this to the mat, and I think that's his only path. And that is exactly what Paddy will want. So how does BSD win? I think BSD wins through top control. And I think that's been said out there before, which I also believe that's true of the things that people are saying. I think top control is a real worry here. We've seen Paddy stuck on bottom before, haven't we? I mean, we saw him fought Jordan Levitt, and he was controlled for some time on the mat. But Paddy's pretty tricky, and he has worked a lot on his strength, his conditioning. He's a big lightweight like BSD. I think this could be truly a chaotic fight and a 50-50. And when it's a 50-50, you need to be probably sitting with a plus money ticket in your hand. I actually think Paddy should be a favourite, so I think there's a lot of value in the Paddy money line. If he gets close to like plus 110, I can understand just wanting to pass on it, but it has been plus 130. It was as high as plus 170. I was too chicken or just not focused on the fight enough to take the plus 170, and now I ended up taking the plus 130. But it is what it is. I think plus money, Paddy's the side. And I completely agree with Josh. It wouldn't surprise me if Paddy's going to finish BSD, because BSD has to change his approach here. I'm not saying he can't change his approach, but he can't be bull in a china shop. Paddy will know, he'll expect that. I think if he's bull in a china shop, he's either going to get KO'd or subbed early. If he holds back a little bit, which isn't his usual game, I think that's his best chance. I think he needs to be smart. I think BSD needs to find takedowns that give him positional advantage and top control. And I think he needs to work for a decision. I know people will be like hammering the unders here. I think chaos is likely. So, unders aren't a bad look. But I think if there's a more likely finisher, it's Pimblett. Will, how do you see it going?
Very similar to how you just described it, really. I think that there are some sort of similarities between them on paper, but the only area I should say that I severely think that BSD is better is probably in pure wrestling, and that doesn't mean enough when it comes to breaking down a fight, because Pimblett might be the better grappler. I agree with you that I expect Pimblett to be the better grappler, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he'll win the fight based off of it, because, as you say, we have seen him stuck on bottom. Jordan Levitt, if I remember correctly, Tony Ferguson had a weird amount of time on top. That might be a lie. I can't remember. I mean, at the very least, there's the Soren Back fight from a long time ago. I remember watching that live. Just Pimblett just spent too much time trying to fish for submissions and just ended up on bottom for the entire fight. And BSD knows how to make it count when he's on top. He's not a lay and pray kind of guy. He's got an intensity to him. Whether or not that gives Pimblett the chance to get back up again, or helps BSD sort of secure his or bank his top control time, I suppose. I don't know, but the striking, I'm not a fan of either guy's striking, but I think Pimblett has more process, diversity, maybe not dangerousness, but I think Pimblett should be expected to win minutes on the feet. Overall, I do think Pimblett should also be the favourite. Yeah, it's annoying, really. I did my research on it, and then there was a decent spike in the line, and I think Pimblett went down to plus 125. But then actually processing this one and talking about it, I do think Pimblett at plus money is a good bet, but it's now plus 110. Now sometimes I find it so difficult when you see loads of what could have been value when you're looking at a worse price and you still think it's an okay price, but you could have had so much better. It's very hard to stomach. So I haven't bet it, and I don't know if I will, but if this was the line the entire time, I probably would have done, if that makes sense. Yeah, so Pimblett's the side for me. I think him at plus money is a decent bet. As long as he doesn't get stuck on bottom.
All right. Here we have a high-level bantamweight fight between Cory Sandhagen and Mario Bautista. I think this is just a great fight. I think this could be one of the closest fights on the card. And I mean, at the moment, the current line is pretty close as well. So we've got Cory Sandhagen is minus 140. That's 1.7. And Mario Bautista is plus 120. That's 2.2. And I think that's pretty consistent across most of the sports books. So this is definitely one of the closest fights. Actually, I think the closest line fight, the true 50-50 at the moment, is the Cong Wang Tracy Cortez, which we'll break down later. But this is another really, really close fight. These two guys have fought before. I think it was Bautista's one of his earlier fights in the UFC, and he got subbed by Cory Sandhagen pretty quickly. So I'm sure he's been wanting to get this one back for a long time. And I do find it hard to sort of drive a wedge between these two. I guess ultimately, if I was going to have to make a pick, I would pick Sandhagen, and the reason is he's got more experience, more high level experience. I think he's got the slightly flashier striking, which sometimes can help with the scorecards in a very close fight. I think he also attacks subs a little more. Like I like Mara Bautista. I think he's extremely competent, and he's going to be competitive everywhere with Sandhagen. So striking is good, even though he's at a slight actually he's at a reach advantage here, 72 inches, so he's at a height disadvantage but a reach advantage. So I think his striking is very serviceable. I think his grappling is excellent, but I think Sandhagen does all those things just a tiny smidge better. If I was going to say where is Bautista better than Sandhagen, I think it's probably in like control, and his strength and power are probably better, higher than Sandhagen's. We haven't seen that in many fights from Bautista. I think both of these fighters are extremely high fight IQ. And for that reason, I think this could be a kind of chess match. And, in those chess matches, we tend to see them, maybe not throw the kitchen sink too early. So the over 2.5 rounds, probably this box should be on the left because Josh has taken the Sandhagen money line. I'm recommending the over 2.5 rounds. I haven't placed that bet myself yet, but I just looked at it and I thought, okay, it's not bad. It's not too bad. Price of minus 250, 1.4. But yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of technical stand-up. I think there'll be some grappling mixed in there. So like if one of the fighters, whoever gets hurt, basically, if Sandhagen gets hurt or Bautista gets hurt or is getting the worst of the stand-up, then I think that person will initiate the takedowns. I think I can envisage Bautista actually initiating the grappling and having some top control for a short period of time over Sandhagen, who's a good scrambler, a good wrestler himself. We saw there are levels here. So both these guys have fought Umar Nurmagomedov, and I thought both of them fought pretty decently. I think Bautista actually impressed me more, but that was only a 3-round fight where Sandhagen had to go 5 rounds with Umar. So I think if you're going to bet this, initially I thought maybe there was value on the Sandhagen money line. I guess if it gets a little bit higher, if we get Sandhagen minus 120, I'd definitely be interested. I'm more interested in betting on Sandhagen, but when I initially saw this fight and Sandhagen was 1.67 minus 150, I just thought, no, I can't bet that. I think at the sort of plus 130, plus 140 range, Bautista would be the side just for the variance. And by that I mean, if it's a close fight and you're relying on judges to tell you who's won the fight, you want to really be sitting with the plus money ticket. But that's just how I see it. I know it wasn't a great in-depth breakdown. Perhaps go to Will. Have you got any further insights for us?
I took the exact same approach as you, really. I didn't really zoom in on any of the sort of stylistic technicalities because I took one look at the betting line and it just made sense to me. Like, Cory Sandhagen is basically a walking bantamweight measuring stick. He's demonstrated that he is sort of in a league of his own, but it's not the top league. He's like a B+, and everyone else is either in the A range or is not a B+. He beats who he beats relatively easily, and he loses to who he loses to relatively concisely. So where does Mario Bautista sit on this metaphorical measuring stick that I'm talking about? And I would say the results are inconclusive. Bautista's only just making his way to well, he's been in the top 15 for long enough, but it's still sort of like, I don't really know, like he hit his ceiling against Umar Nurmagomedov. Absolutely no shame in that at all, but again, shows he's not in the A category. But he beat the brakes off of Lockdog Oliveira. I personally think there's an asterisk in that one. I do not think that Vinicius Oliveira looked himself in that fight, and I think he broke his hand during camp. So I give him a pass for that one. But yeah, I've always been impressed by what I've seen by Bautista. And, getting KO'd by Trevin Jones is weird, but I guess everyone gets like a pass on a weird loss. And obviously the loss to Sandhagen was his debut, and I think it was short notice. He was a complete nobody when he came in. So I don't see enough reason to knock Bautista, but I also don't necessarily see enough reason to be like, oh, he is as good as Cory Sandhagen. Sandhagen has a long and storied career of being, just a step behind the elite guys in the division. And I don't know if Bautista is. I don't know if he isn't either. I just don't know. So, history tells you that you have to give Sandhagen the benefit of the doubt. If Sandhagen wins a decision here, nobody is going to be surprised. But then if Bautista beats Sandhagen, I think people would only be mildly surprised, which to me sounds like confidence towards Sandhagen, but not by a super committed amount. Which basically makes me think it's Sandhagen or pass. I think that -150 on Sandhagen could actually be decent value if he is in a league of his own in the top mid. But it could also be a fair reflective line. You can't have Bautista as the favorite. So yeah, 60 to 65% probability would be what I would cap Cory Sandhagen, and he's -150. So yeah, I mean, I've probably just rambled there and just wiki capped the whole thing. But I just think that when you're dealing with Cory Sandhagen from a sports betting perspective, it's just a simple case of like problem solving and mathematics. It's not about how he fights because he's so well rounded. There's just, whatever's thrown at him, he'll just handle it, probably. Yeah. A non-committal breakdown from me. Josh, anything that stands out to you? I know you probably taped this a far amount more than I have at this stage.
Taped it. It's Monday. I forgot there was an event on. But in all seriousness, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people talking about how Sandhagen performed against Dvalishvili a while ago, and I kind of want to put my main focus on that because obviously I picked Sandhagen to win here, but there are going to be people who say, yeah, but Merab wrestled and quote unquote dominated him for 25 minutes, and that's complete bullshit because first of all, if you look closely at the stats here, and I'm pretty sure all three of us are looking at the stats page right now, but he as in Merab in this case, he couldn't really keep Sandhagen down. He struggled for the most part in the first round. It was a bit of a good takedown defense from Sandhagen, and then the second round is when things kind of picked up a little bit, right? We see 8 of 13 takedowns landed by Dvalishvili for only 3 minutes and 43 seconds. That is terrible. The most ideal approach for any wrestler is one takedown in any round for more than 3 or 4 minutes, whatever. Control time matters more than volume. And now that we see the stats there, now that I've probably hinted at the probably dozen or so listeners that are listening right now, to look at the stats page, I want to talk about why this matters. Sandhagen has spent a huge camp preparing for that kind of fight, preparing for a Dvalishvili kind of fight, and it paid off. People were expecting Dvalishvili to roll through Sandhagen for 25 minutes. He didn't. It was only 10 minutes of domination on the ground, and that's pretty much it. So to kind of transfer that learned experience from that camp into this camp against Mario Bautista, I do think that Sandhagen's going to be far more prepared for what Bautista has to offer, because Bautista doesn't really offer that much. He is primarily a wrestler. He doesn't really strike that much, and if he does, he is going to get outstruck by Sandhagen, who has the huge arsenal of weaponry, to rely on. Now, the reach difference did surprise me. Bautista does have a 2-inch reach advantage there, but it's not going to matter. If you don't know how to use your reach in a boxing range or in a striking range, it's nullified by a better striker, and in this case, that's Sandhagen. So what do I expect to happen here? I expect Bautista to look to replicate. Oh god, that sounds weird. To look to do what Merab did and wrestle, basically. But to a much lesser volume and degree, because obviously Sandhagen is a great counter wrestler, despite the fact that he got taken down 20 times. But that's evidence that he is a good counter wrestler, because he got up more times or whatever. You know what I mean. But either way, Sandhagen, he's my guy. He is someone who I can happily back this weekend. And as much as I like Bautista, as much as I've called him a miniature nuclear submarine because of his cardio, I don't think that's going to help him too much here. I think that Sandhagen is going to thrive, and if not, then I'll be disappointed. So yeah, that's pretty much my little breakdown.
Right. Next we have Will breaking down Kavanagh against Royval.
Yeah, I think that in a way there's a fair amount of like cross-referencing you can do on this fight compared to what we just saw with Sandhagen and Bautista. I think that Kavanagh is still kind of new to this upper echelon of the division. Not entirely new, but I feel like I would say he's only fought one guy that is top 10 caliber, and that was Brandon Moreno last time. Hell of a performance to beat Brandon Moreno in under those circumstances. I think he won 3 rounds to 2 in most on 2 of the 3 scorecards, but still an incredibly impressive thing to do. Moreno's not quite the same guy he used to be, but yeah, it deserves respect. But I think that Kavanagh's a very good minute winner. He's a very good fighter. He has a couple of moments where he has lapses in judgment, but I think he can be expected to look superior to Brandon Royval here from a minute winning perspective. Because I don't think that's crazy to say, because Brandon Royval's selling point has never really been in his minute winning. It's more just in moments of chaos and damage and sometimes finishing ability. And to me, this therefore pretty much becomes a case of, does Royval stop Kavanagh before Kavanagh soundly looks better than him across 15 minutes? And I would say, that's kind of a tricky-ish thing to quantify. I mean, Royval hasn't finished a fighter since what have we got? Last time he finished someone was Mateus Nicolau, who, as we know, kind of a dodgy chin. And then before that, Matt Schnell, as we know, kind of a dodgy chin, although he did guillotine him. So really, Royval's not actually as dangerous as advertised. I think that really the main sticking point there was that Kai Kara France fight that he had so early on in his UFC career. I mean, really, you could sort of turn it around and say that there's also possible question marks that Royval himself is becoming a little bit of a damage liability. He's been knocked down twice in his last 2 fights, once by Manel Cape and once by Joshua Van. Obviously, Cape finished him. I think Manel Cap. I never know whether or not I want to call him Cape or Cap, so I've said both there. I think Manel Cap is quite clearly on a level of his own in terms of finishing ability for a flyweight, so I don't really feel that spooked by the fact that Royval was knocked out by him, 8 months ago. So, yeah, it basically just comes down to that conundrum. And for me personally, I don't give Royval's finishing equity anything more than 15 to 20%. And I think Kavanagh probably wins the decision relatively fairly. I mean, he's still quite young, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a lock, because I do have, I don't know, there's something about Kavanagh that I'm just kind of unsure if he is capable of shitting the bed. I mean, he's technically already done it because he lost to Charles Johnson, but the same narrative applied to Joshua Van, and he's now the fucking champion. So I think there's a couple of just sort of you just have to kind of hope for the best if you are betting on this one. But I think that the most logical path to take would be the Kavanagh by decision route, because I don't see him finishing Royval really, and I do see him looking better minute by minute. So that's the angle I've gone for this one. I've gone Kavanagh by decision at plus 150. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one to really feel super confident in, just because the fight can sort of turn in an instant with Royval, and that's going to be what he needs to do to win. Anybody else want to add some contributions to this one, or have I absolutely nailed it? Somehow I doubt that.
I feel like you nailed it pretty much, but I'll quickly talk about this one because I got not much to say here, really, surprisingly. Kavanagh is someone who I kind of compare to with Paddy in terms of his rise to the occasion and his rise to the top of the echelon or whatever the ranked fights, basically. So I didn't like how Kavanagh fought Moreno because I wanted that fight to be more competitive. It did not look very competitive. Moreno looked like absolute shit. And then previously, or prior to that, he did lose to Charles Johnson. Who does that? I don't know. Charles Johnson's history in the UFC has been full of either, well, obviously that's going to happen, or, well, holy shit. So, he's a bit of a strange one to break down or predict. So that knockout loss against Johnson was a bit of a surprise. And then he fought some really rough fighters in Felipe Dos Santos, Jose Ochoa, and then that other Asian dude who I can't really pronounce, Antoine Ho, which sounds like my old Taekwondo coach. Anyway, I picked over 2.5 rounds here. My bet is over 2.5 rounds here because I don't think Royval is going to be finished here. He's very durable. He's got the cardio. He's got all of that stuff, but he lacks everything else, everything that makes a fighter great. The height difference here makes me believe that Royval is going to go for a jumping knee at any time there. So if I'm correct and Royval gets a jumping knee or at least attempts one, I'm going to be laughing. But either way, I don't think Kavanagh's going to be worried about that too much. Kavanagh's boxing and his hand speed is going to be the main story here. Royval is very good at eating punches as well as probably eating pussy. This YouTube video is going to be fucking flagged. It's going to be my fault. I apologize, Dom. But anyway, I got no strong leans here. Both fighters are very durable. They're both kind of decent, but to me, it's a battle of who sucks worse. And in this case, I think Royval probably sucks worse. Maybe, I don't know. That's my terrible R-rated rant of the day. So go on, Dom. Tell me off. It's all right.
No, you're all good. We haven't had any YouTube police on us so far, so I think we'll probably be okay. Yeah, I think I don't have a lot to say here. I think you guys have summarized it pretty well. I think Kavanagh is the side here. I just find it very hard to get past Royval's recent form and also health issues. So he had some serious concussion issues where he was suffering quite badly after one of his fights. I'm trying to figure out which one it was. It was pre-Cap and pre-Van. That's right. I think after the Tyra fight, he was noted to have concussion issues, so like headaches, light sensitivity, and that's quite serious. And then then you go and fight one of the one of the highest volume 3-round fights I think ever against Josh Van, and then you get knocked out cold in round 1. It's just not a good look. I think Royval is also surprisingly old. I thought he looks really young, but he was born in 1992. So I guess that would put him at 33, 34 years old. So for a flyweight, he's definitely getting up there. For me, it feels like a passing of the baton, passing of the guard type of fight. Where the line is now, minus 200 on Kavanagh, feels like there might be a little bit of value there. I don't hate the decision play if the odds are good on that, but I do worry about Royval's chin. I think we saw Kavanagh hurt Marino several times. I was on Marino in that fight, and you're right, he just looked awful in that fight, so washed. And so it's hard to really judge Kavanagh's level. But I think Kavanagh is very defensively sound. I think especially since the CJ fight, we got knocked out by Charles Johnson. He's just, tightened up all areas of his game. He's not taking any of these vets for granted. This is a fight he should win. I know Royval is tricky. Royval has skills everywhere. He has striking, he has grappling. But the problem is he's not particularly like effective with them. Any time he's fought a better, like an elite fighter, he's generally been outmatched in all those areas. His main advantage is actually cardio, and this is a 3-round fight. If this is a 5-round fight, I think it might be interesting to think about the Royval side. But yeah, I think Kavanagh's decision does feel for me like the most likely outcome. I'm personally just taking the money line just because I'm a bit worried about Royval's durability. Would it surprise me if Royval turned up and made this fight really close? No. In which case, I think a decision path is Royval's best hope. And I think I'll leave it there.
Oh boy. Well, I knew I was covering this fight because we go over the slides before we record, and I still got nothing here. So well, frankly, we got a bit of a fun fight. First of all, it's going to be a wild first round, but that's it. I think we are going to see either McKinney have one of two personas here. He's either going to be McKinney or be McKinney. Really, like either he's going to get slapped by Green or he's going to put Green away. But I kind of want to try and break that first round curse here a little bit. Now, if Dom could share my bet there, I think I have it written down. Yeah, I think we are gonna see a second round finish. Will contradicted me there a bit with the first round win for McKinney. I'll let him talk about that in a second. But I feel like King Green is gonna be a bit too elusive for McKinney to do anything. I mean, we could see a takedown followed by a submission. That's most likely to happen. But also, I just want to see the fight end in round 2, maybe for an alt bet's sake, maybe because of the odds and all that stuff, because typically the odds for a McKinney fight to go to the second round or any second round outcome would be pretty high. So I just want that to happen. It's more of a gamble, really, than anything else. This fight requires no in-depth breakdown because, frankly, if I tried to, I'd laugh too much and it would be terrible for this episode. So, Will McKinney in round 1, go.
That's just what he does. Like, it's that simple. It's just what he does. And King Green is, yeah. I mean, I feel like Bobby. I still call him Bobby Green. I just don't agree with him changing his name. Bobby Green is like always seems a bit to me like a fighter who he needs to realize that he's actually in with a chance before he starts taking it seriously. If that makes sense. And Bobby Green has always really done his best work over long 15-minute periods where his pressure, intensity, overall ability and cardio kind of come to the forefront, and he sort of rallies himself to win fights. And that's going to be the case here. Like, I just think that if Terrance McKinney shows a typical Terrance McKinney round 1, I don't think King Green can hang with it at all. I think he's going to either get hurt and finished by something, or he's just going to have some sort of like mental lapse where he just doesn't circle or manage his distance well enough, and he gets absolutely fucking blasted with something. But then if we get to round 2, I think then Green will be like, hang on, like the door's wide open here, and then suddenly he'll burst into life and look good. I mean, to be honest, that summary, you could take the names out and just apply it to any Terrance McKinney fight. The guy has some sort of weird mystical ability to just lose all of his MMA ability on the stool. So I used to historically bet on McKinney round 1 or his opponent in round 2, which is actually quite a fruitful betting line. But I don't know if I trust Bobby Green to finish him because Bobby's a bit passive. But yeah, I just think that like which one comes first, right? Because yes, I think King Green probably wins relatively easily after round 1, but I think Terrance McKinney wins relatively easily. Well, can win relatively easily in round 1 himself. So it's like which one comes first, and McKinney one does. So I think that's the pick I ended up leaning on. I haven't got any betting lines for it yet though, so I don't actually know whether or not I'm going to play it. But I'm looking to play the McKinney round 1 just because I just would be very impressed to see King Green survive 5 minutes if there isn't some sort of like stalling or like nut shot delays or something like that. I just feel like Green is vulnerable enough that McKinney, being a trailblazer that he is like, Green is ripe for the picking to get finished, basically. Yeah. Dom, how about you settle this one for us? Round 1 or round 2?
I don't see it any differently, first of all, but I will just go with round 2. I mean, nothing like strong lean here, no like major bet from me or anything, but just where the betting line is with like King Green. I haven't looked at it recently, plus 140. I wouldn't play that, but if I was forced to take a bet, I would take a bet on King Green, just because he's a vet, and I know he's been caught before early. But if you look at some of the losses, like, I mean, the Ruffy one was a head kick. I mean, it was a brutal head kick. I'm not saying that was lucky or anything, but I think it's one of those things that you need the right setup for that kind of finish. And of course, that could happen. I'm definitely not counting out McKinney here. It's not going to surprise me if he gets to round 1. I just think that King Green, especially in the Zelf-Huber fight, showed that he can stay safe. He's got the bob, he's got the weave. He doesn't put his hands up. He does the Philly shell roll, which is largely concerning, I think, for all of us. I quite like King Green. I think he's proved something in his late career that he can be competitive with very good fighters. I know he got knocked out by Drew Dober as well. Again, that was the hands low thing. And I know that Terrance McKinney likes the blitz. So I think you guys are absolutely right. If Bobby Green can survive round 1, I think he's very live to win the fight. I wouldn't say round 2, but the way you proposed the question was round 1 or 2. I think, it's likely that the fight will end in round 2, but we don't know. I mean, anything can happen. So yeah, I definitely lean a little bit with Bobby, but that's more price sensitivity than anything. I think when you have a Terrance McKinney fight, I don't think you can really price Terrance McKinney more than 50-50, just because he can't fight out of round 1. So you've got that 5-minute survival, and King Green has gone to round 2 more often than not, or definitely more than 50%. My lean would be King Green here to weather an early storm, use the vet savvy, and either decision McKinney or finish him round 2 or round 3. But it's not a strong lean. I just think that McKinney needs to adapt, and he's never shown an ability to adapt. So I fully expect Terrance McKinney to come out, be a bull in a china shop, and go for the finish.
All right. And now we have the token women's MMA fight of the card and of the podcast. We have Tracy Cortez taking on Wang Cong, or Cong Wang, as I always call her. I always struggle with Chinese fighters. I never remember which way around it's supposed to go. But, interesting one. Pretty much a pure striker versus grappler affair, you would think. But I suppose Tracy Cortez is well-rounded enough these days to be given some credit for her overall MMA game. Whereas, Wang Cong is going to be looking at strike and strike only. So I don't really think that power is a discussion for this one. Like, Wang Cong has a few finishes, but I don't really think that there's anything to worry about in that regard. I think it's just going to become a simple case of who wins minutes and therefore who wins a decision, or who is able to really implement their game the most. And if you're looking at the Cortez side, it does have to come from the grappling, because if we get 15 minutes of pure striking where there's no control time either side, I fully expect Wang Cong to win this one, right? I think that's not controversial at all. Cortez has shown herself to be a decent enough competent striker when going up against women who are either not on her level or have a plan, like a predominant skill set that lies in another area. So like Jasmine Jasudavicius, for example. Tracy Cortez was probably the better striker there, I think. But this is not a case like that. She's facing a specialist, and the specialist is going to look better than her on the feet. And we've seen this happen to Tracy Cortez before. The Rose Namajunas fight most recently, I suppose, was probably the best demonstration of that, where there was far more striking from the Cortez side than there really should have been, and there was just levels. I mean, Rose Namajunas these days is not a particularly lethal striker. I mean, she never really has been, but she was just happy to, jump in and out, sit on the outside, and just sort of land her shots as and when she wanted to. But yeah, Cortez had a very strange approach to that one. I mean, she only landed 2 takedowns. She attempted 5. I suppose that's not too bad, but she didn't even get a minute of control time, and she kind of just got stranded from that point. There was a great moment where Rose Namajunas punched her in the face, and her fake eyelash came flying out, which some would say says more than you think about Tracy Cortez. And I suppose really, anytime you look at a Tracy Cortez fight, you do kind of need to look at the intangibles. And the intangibles is that she wears her heart on her sleeve. I'll leave it at that. She's very I don't know, blows hot and cold. And I think it's not surprising that we're coming into this fight for her off the back of a really shocking performance against Erin Blanchfield, where she just didn't look great at all. And the mistake that she made to getting finished there was just pretty shocking. So I think that, you know, conversations about fight IQ, dropping the ball, stuff like that, pretty much on the Cortez side, which when talking about this, I think she's the one who's going to have to come into this fight with the game plan. That concerns me a little bit. But then again, if Tracy Cortez does come out to wrestle and grapple, which you would hope that she and her coaches have done enough research to understand that she should be using that primary skill set. I don't think it's necessarily a given that she beats Wang Cong, but I think she should probably be expected to. I think that what we saw from Wang Cong in the was it Eduardo Mora? I forget. Yes, it was. What we saw from her in that fight it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible for somebody who is, you know, a lifelong kickboxer. I mean, she got taken down 3 times, but it only, you know, and it did result in a lot of top control time, but she shut down a lot of the dangerousness. And I don't think Tracy Cortez is a particularly dangerous top control person anyway. So I don't think that this fight is entirely predicated on whether or not Tracy Cortez lands those takedowns, because if she lands takedowns and sits in guard for 2 minutes per round, it's not necessarily going to win her the fight, because I think she has a striking style that will basically allow Wang Cong to just like have those moments. And if she sends her eyelashes into Rosette again, then, you know, there's a possibility that Wang Cong wins off of damage and fight ending intent. So you can hear me going back and forth on this one. There are definitely multiple paths to victory across the fight, and those lean towards either woman. So I think it is a close fight. For me personally, though, I think that with it being in the bigger cage and with Wang Cong having kind of demonstrated an ability to lean on moments as opposed to just being the grappler, and also getting better in between fights. Also adding in the fact that Tracy Cortez is a little bit of a head case, to put it more bluntly than last time. I do think that a slight lean towards her makes sense. But yeah, close fight. Couldn't really argue the toss if somebody wanted to bet either side here, really. So it is a close one. Does anybody want to pitch for a more dominant favorite on either side, or do you agree this one's pretty 50-50?
I think about this fight only once, and that's just now. And I can't help but think that it's either going to be Cortez getting the wrestling going or Wang Cong getting the kickboxing going. It's going to be that black and white, really. And as we saw, or as we know by now, Cortez is a terrible striker. She cannot strike at all. I mean, maybe not at all, but like very well. I just think that it's going to be one of those classic matchups in which we either see the wrestler wrestle or the kickboxer kickbox. And I think we spoke about on Discord briefly, you know, Cortez should, in my opinion at least, get the wrestling going, because if not, maybe it won't be just the eyelashes flying everywhere, but it might be the tons of makeup that she wears, like the black gloves that Wang Cong's gonna wear is gonna be tanned by the time she's done with Cortez. Either way, I think it's just as, you know, basic as either Cortez wrestles and wins, or Cong strikes and wins, or maybe gets the KO, or maybe not. I don't know. Either way, I just wrote goes the distance, because I figured who cares? I mean, I know that people would care about this fight, but me personally, it's just like it could go the distance kind of thought. So that's my very basic thing to say. Dom, what do you got?
Yeah, so I mean, initially I went pretty heavy on Kong Wang. I thought that the line would definitely favor her, and it hasn't. Well, it did initially for like a day or two. So initially it opened up, and I think Kong Wang got to like minus 150 range, which is kind of where I thought it would be. So I took her at like minus 120, thinking, okay, at least I'll have the ability to to modify my bet size if I need to, by betting on the Cortez side at plus money. But that hasn't panned out. So I at the moment I'm thinking of not having so much exposure to Kong Wang. I do have her on my betting slate. I do think that my lean is maintained, like slight lean towards her, and that's for the reasons that Will already mentioned in terms of the sort of unreliability of Cortez. I do think in Cortez's favor, strength competition is very high. I don't think Kong Wang has faced really anyone as good as Cortez in her UFC run. Do agree that I think all the time on the feet really favors Kong to win the minutes. But yeah, I think Cortez is very live to get the takedowns here and potentially show some fight IQ. You never know, do you, with Tracy Cortez? And I think it's one of those things, like earlier on in her UFC career, she was shooting a lot. She has a lot of takedowns on her record. She isn't, as you mentioned, she isn't particularly lethal on top. She doesn't do a great deal of ground and pound or have any sub game. But in some of the fights, she has changed the fight using her ground and pound / takedown. So particularly in my mind, there were two fights where she showed that fight IQ, and it was the takedowns which made the difference, like close fights. So Viviane Araujo, Melissa Gatto, those are both 1-1, I think, going into the third. Well, there certainly was in the Gatto fight. It was 1-1 going the third, and it was the takedown and the top control which won her the Gatto fight. But I want to caveat that, because Gatto actually didn't use takedown defense. She went for the guillotine. It's like, oh man, when you see a fighter do that in the third round, you're like, God. So really that was Gatto's poor fight IQ. She ended up on bottom after going for a guillotine choke, which is just the worst way to lose a fight, isn't it? And I think Viviane Araujo shot the first takedown on Cortez. Again, man, fight IQ. You're shooting on a wrestler. So whilst those do show Cortez can win fights using grappling, again, their opponents didn't display the best fight IQ. So I've just gone round and round on this one. I think Cortez is going to get takedowns for sure in this fight. We saw with the Mora fight that, actually Kong Wang has some takedown defense. She does, fish for underhooks. She does reverse on the cage. She does do the right things. I think there's just some question marks of, can she do the right things against someone as high level as Cortez? That I don't know. So I'm just going to assume that Cortez is going to get some takedowns. And I don't know if she's going to get a lot of top control, but I assume she's going to have some control. And that just makes me lukewarm on the Kong side. Look, I think even money, for me personally, I think Kong's worth a shot. I played it at favorite money Kong, so that's why I'm kind of like in this weird space where I'm like, I don't know really what to do. I think there were some better options for me to have played this fight. Like I could have played Kong decision no action. I haven't seen that lined yet, but I'd definitely be interested in Kong decision no action. So the reason I like that is because Kong has got 3 knockdowns. She's knocked down 3 of her 6 UFC opponents, and Cortez was knocked down by Rose in the last fight. So I think there's more finishing upside for Kong. Probably that the books are sharp. Probably they're going to factor that in, and it will probably be like -2 something. But if I could get Kong decision no action at -200, I'd be very interested in that. I think Cortez is live to win a decision here. So mainly I'm interested in just reducing my stake on Kong. I feel like it's like a 1 unit play, and I currently have 3 units on Kong Wang, which is just makes me feel uncomfortable having reviewed the tape, because I do think it's close. Like I say, I mean, you can make a case that maybe Kong should be a slight favorite just due to trajectory and Cortez's recent performances. But it won't surprise me, as Will has said, if if Cortez just comes in, shoots a takedown early, and starts to get some control and put Kong Wang behind. So from that perspective, there's a live angle here, which is if Cortez is striking with Kong Wang for the whole of round 1. Probably the line will get blown out by that point. But if you get the feeling that Cortez can't get the takedowns for whatever reason, I think Kong Wang's going to be a very strong favorite. So you should jump on that. But if Cortez gets the takedowns, I mean, the line will reverse in the other direction. It's one of those fights. I think the line being close makes a lot of sense. Basically, I just thought the popularity of Cong Wang would be much higher. From a betting perspective early, but it wasn't the case. And sometimes we make these oversights, and for me personally, that's the oversight I made.
Speaking of betting oversights, my slate this week is trash. Not in terms of the bets, but just in terms of when I pulled the trigger and what I pulled the trigger with and how much for, etc., etc. All the numbers are just terrible. So starting off, I parlayed Max Holloway and Robert Whittaker when Robert Whittaker was minus 200. You can now get Robert Whittaker at minus 150. So that's a shit bet. Plus 117 on that one. I don't really know why people are betting Krylov. Like, I understand Rob's probably going to be a little bit undersized, but are people forgetting that Nikita Krylov is like pretty washed? Any of his credibility about him as a fighter in 2026 is held together by his win over Modestas Bukauskas, which wasn't by Krylov standards particularly dominant. Like, yeah, he won and he won soundly, but and he finished him in the third. But Krylov's supposed to be a dangerous guy that finishes people and that uses his wrestling and just dominates folks. And it was like a 70-30 relatively tepid striking fight. I don't know. It's Robert Whittaker, man. If the size isn't an issue, the minus 150 money line on Whittaker is going to look like one of the best bets of the year, I think. So I was willing to back that. So, but yeah, don't copy that bet. Just if you were going to take Whittaker, just take him as a single. Also, Lonnie Kavanagh by decision. Talked about that one. Plus 150, I think, is a decent enough number considering he's minus 220 on the money line. Don't think he finishes Royval. Cong Wang money line literally echoed the sentiments that Dom was talking about there. I was quite confident that Wang would get some love. There's a good statement for you. I was quite confident that Cong Wang would get money coming in on her by the betting public. So I kind of went over aggressive there, thinking I was going to be able to research it a bit more and then make my decision about it. But that has not happened. So I'm going to roll with it. I do think that Cong Wang should be a bit more of a favorite than she was at is it even money? So I don't think minus 125 is a bad bet. It's just not the most valuable. Finally, Terrance McKinney in round one. I'm always interested in playing some sort of prop in a McKinney fight. I think that's the one I'm going to go for, but it might change. Obviously, we don't really have those specific round props out yet, so I don't know what I'm doing there. But other than those four stances, I may look at the Paddy Pimblett moneyline side. That's something that has kind of interested me. The more the cogs have turned as we've talked about it on this podcast, the more I kind of like it. So maybe that, but other than that's all I'm going to have for this one. So Dom, over to you.
Yeah, I was also intrigued by the movement on Krylov because I initially looked at that and thought, yeah, it seems about right. Rob is a much better mixed martial artist all round, and yeah, I think that's one of the biggest movers this week is Krylov from plus 200 down to plus 130 now. But I think he should be good. I think Rob is the side there. I think the reason the lines come in is just the question marks, right? He was a former welterweight, and then he was campaigning at middleweight. It wasn't a big middleweight, so I guess it's the question marks about. I think some people may be waiting to see how he looks physically, in a face-off with Krylov, and you might get a large amount of money coming in on Robert Whittaker late there. You never know. I'd certainly be interested in Robert Whittaker if it got a little bit higher. I mean, 1.67, as you mentioned, that's crazy. I mean, that's already getting pretty attractive to me. This is what I've got. Yeah, I don't generally hold my horses when it comes to these UFC main events. So just to explain here, I am max betting Max, but I will be taking the Conor round 1 or 2 as a hedge. So what does that mean? That means that I've put enough money to cover my stake on Max by playing a plus 500 bet on Conor. So you don't have to put too much on Conor round 1 or 2 to cover the Max stake. So that's what that means. However, in addition to playing the Max money line, I am considering Max inside the distance or KO because that's going to be slightly better. I've got the lines now, so I can find Max KO on Betfair at close to even money. So I'm like, okay, even money versus minus 200. Am I worried about a sub or a decision? Not really. I think those are really small chances. I haven't got it here, but I'm also playing the under 2.5. Josh recommended the under 3.5. I think the under 3.5 is much safer, of course, but the under 2.5 is currently lined at even money. I'm thinking even money for a guy that's been out for 5 years, even if he gets the finish, right? You cover yourself in both directions. I do worry about Max finishing Conor that early because I'm not 100% that he can do that. But I think likely this fight is more than 50% chance to finish under 2.5 rounds. So, that's halfway through round 3. I'll really be surprised if we get to round 3, to be honest. So I'm surprised at the lining. I think that will potentially, see some love this week, the under 2.5, but we'll see. We've talked about the Paddy fight. I do think I just think he is better in the two areas that matter, striking and grappling, and it's just the wrestling which is the question mark. So I was happy to jump in on Paddy. Missed a lot of the good plus money. He was plus 150, plus 140 for ages. I was looking at it thinking, I think he's the side, but then didn't pull the trigger. After looking into it, I still felt like any plus money, to be honest, is good on Paddy here. Actually, I think the best bet you can make on Paddy personally is decision no action, which is currently priced higher than his money line. So that's saying that Paddy has less chance of winning a finish than by decision, which I think is wrong. And it's saying Benoit Sandhagen has more chance of a finish on Paddy than a decision, which is, I just don't think that can be the case. I think it's just the way that BSD fights. That's the reason it's priced this way. I think it's more like 50-50 in terms of finishing at best or at worst rather for Paddy. So yeah, I like decision no action. So that means if Paddy finishes, you get paid. If it goes to decision and BSD wins the decision, you get the stake back. I like Paddy by sub plus 600. I haven't pulled the trigger there yet. I was just going to give it more thought because, as Josh mentioned, I think the KO is very live as well. We've seen BSD finish 3 times in the UFC. I think all 3 times was via KO. So initially finished by Zaleski. He showed his toughness there. It was a standing KO, just taking so much damage, like a lifetime beating from Zaleski at welterweight though. And then he lost to Moicano through ground and pound. And then he lost to Justin Poirier again, punches, and finished him there. So he's been knocked out 3 times in the UFC. Paddy's never been finished in the UFC. And I think he has been finished outside of the UFC in Cage Warriors. That was a sub when he was very young. He was like 22 years old. So I would be surprised if BSD finished Paddy. Of course, anything's possible in this sport. So it's not going to surprise me that greatly when you've got a marauder like BSD. But no, give me Paddy to finish by sub. I'll say it could be round 1. And then the final fight, which I'm planning on betting on, and I have taken the money line here with the money line for Kavanagh, is Yanez. So Yanez money line, Kavanagh money line is my square parlay of the week. But I think a sort of slightly sharper way to play it might be Yanez in round 2 or 3. I've seen some people out there saying, Yanez is going to finish Cody Garbrandt in round 1. I mean, it's possible. But I think if you've watched Cody recently, he's pretty defensively responsible early. He only starts to open up when he's tired, right? And I think that Zhao Long fight, which was a terrible look for Garbrandt, he clearly lost that fight. He had 2 points gifted to him by 2 consecutive groin strikes from Zhao Long. So, if you're losing to Zhao Long, and he got outstruck by 3-1 in that fight, like 60-20, it was crazy. I think Yanez will be live for a later finish. I will say I lean more with the round 2. I think Cody stays safe, but the minute he starts swinging really big, he could get caught. Cody's always live for an early finish. I will say that as well. Yanez has been knocked out by Rob Font, so it's definitely not like something that I'm super high on, but I definitely will play Yanez to get a round 2 or round 3 finish. You could also play that as a round 2 or 3 KO, TKO probably. Sometimes I just like to go with the rounds because I don't feel like there's a lot of equity specifying the method, but it's likely a KO or TKO. What have you got, Josh?
I don't have much at all. These are just potential parlay legs here. So I don't even know if I spelled that guy's name right. Stevenson, he is taking on Ellison. And if you follow wrestling a lot, you know who Gable Stevenson is. So there's no T in that name there. I apologize. But he has destroyed competition, and I think he's the one that John Jones trains with. I don't know. But either way, Ellison is basically shit. And I think that we're going to see a first round finish. If not, then maybe, under 1.5. Pimblett money line or ITD is there just for the sake of having a bet on Pimblett. Garbrandt Yanez round 3 starts. Yes, that one's a bit sketchy because as as Dom said, Garbrandt is good in the first round, or he is good early on. He can find his strikes, but like if he doesn't, Yanez is good at basically finding the timing for the counters and all that stuff. So bit of a sketchy parlay leg if I do choose to use that as a leg. And then Conor Max ITD under 3.5, whichever. I just think there's going to be a brawl, there's going to be a war, and someone's chin, probably Conor's, is going to go down, and that's going to be the end of that chapter. So yeah.
Well, thank you guys. It has been a pleasure breaking down UFC 329. It's definitely going to be a historic card. Return of the Mac. It's going to be a bit of a come down after that. What have we got after UFC 329? We've got probably going straight back to the Apex, aren't we? I imagine.
I haven't even thought that's what I heard. It's
Actually, we've got Dricus Duplessis versus Kamaru Usman, so that would be interesting. And it's co-main Jared Cannonier and CLD. So actually, no, not too bad for the following week. We're not going to hit the ground hard. So looking forward to breaking down that one with you. I don't know if it's. I don't think it's in the Apex. I think that might be in just like a random American city, probably. But we'll be looking into that and breaking that down in 1 week. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening, and catch you on the next one.